Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on something that's absolutely fundamental to modern procurement, the digital handshake between Ariba and an external ERP system. We're going to demystify how data actually flows between them to make that whole procure-to-pay process feel seamless. So, let's get into it.
Okay, first things first, what are we even talking about when we say system integration? Well, at its core, it's really just about getting two different systems to talk to each other automatically. Think of it as a scheduled, automated conversation. Data gets pushed and pulled between Ariba and your ERP without anyone having to manually type it all in. This is the magic that really makes everything else we're about to discuss possible.
So here's our game plan for today. We've already touched on system integration. Next, we're going to build our foundation with something called master data. Then we'll follow a purchase order on its journey through the transactional flow. After that, we'll see how we close the loop with financials, and we'll wrap up with the big "so what?" the real benefits of getting this right.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Before you can even think about placing an order or spending a single dollar, you have to build a solid foundation. And that foundation is called master data. You can think of it as the shared language or the rule book that both systems have to agree on before they can even start their conversation.
You know, it's really helpful to think of your data in two distinct buckets. On one side, you've got master data. This is the who and the what, the core info that doesn't change very often. Think of it as the nouns, your users, your suppliers, your accounting codes. And on the other side, you have the transactional data. This is the doing, the verbs. These are the documents like purchase orders and invoices that are created using that master data. You absolutely cannot have one without the other.
So, let's start with the people. User master data is all about defining who gets to log into Ariba and, just as importantly, what they can actually do once they're in there. This data is usually pulled from your HR system or ERP, and it sets up everything from permissions to handy little defaults for each user, like what cost center their purchases should hit. It's basically the people blueprint for the whole system.
Okay, now this is absolutely crucial. Your supplier master data is so much more than just a list of names and addresses. It holds the keys to the entire transactional kingdom. And the most critical piece of that puzzle? The ERP vendor number. Without that number synced up, when Ariba sends a PO over, the ERP has no idea who it's for. It's a non-starter. Same thing with payment terms. That's vital for the finance side of things. This data has to be perfectly in sync, period.
And of course, we've got to talk about the money. The accounting master data gets pulled straight from your ERP's chart of accounts. Now, this does more than just populate Ariba with valid cost centers and GL codes. The really powerful part is that it brings over the financial rules, the cross-validations. This ensures that all the financial data is clean and correct from the very second a user starts creating a requisition.
And here's a perfect example of how that works in the real world. Let's say your ERP has a rule baked in. All purchases for office supplies have to be coded to the administration budget. Well, because you've integrated that master data, when a user in Ariba picks the office supplies category, boom! The system can automatically fill in the administration cost center for them. No guesswork, no mistakes. It just works.
All right, our foundation is built. All our master data is in sync and talking nicely. So now, let's follow the action. We're going to trace the journey of one single purchase order as it zips from Ariba over to the ERP and back again. So this is what a typical PO lifecycle looks like. Let's walk through it. It all kicks off once a requisition gets fully approved inside Ariba. At that point, the system creates a PO, but it's kind of in a temporary ordering status with just an internal ID. Then Ariba bundles that data up and sends it to the ERP. The ERP tries to create its official PO, and if everything looks good, it sends a confirmation back to Ariba, which includes the official ERP PO number. Only then does Ariba flip the switch, update the status, and send the final PO out to the supplier. It's a real call and response. But what happens if that call and response fails? What if the systems disagree? Say the data Ariba sent violates a rule in the ERP, maybe an invalid currency code. Well, the ERP doesn't just silently reject it. It sends a specific error message back to Ariba. The system clearly states the problem, pushes the PO back into a requisition state, and pings the user to let them know they need to fix it. This feedback loop is just essential for keeping your data clean.
Okay, so the order was sent, and now the goods have arrived at the loading dock. The next step is for someone to log that receipt in Ariba. As soon as that happens, Ariba packages that info up and exports it to the ERP. The ERP processes it, creates its own receipt record, and sends a confirmation number back. Ariba then updates its status to processed. This is how you make sure both systems agree that the stuff has actually been received.
we've ordered, we've received, and now it's time to pay the bill. This is the final, and you could argue the most critical part of the whole process. This is where we officially close the financial loop between the two systems.
So here's the key moment. Once an invoice is received and fully approved in Ariba, it creates something called an invoice reconciliation, or IR document. That IR is then set to a paying status and exported to the ERP. And that export is essentially Ariba giving the ERP the OK to pay signal. It's saying, hey, we've checked everything, this one's good to go. The ERP, which is your system for payments, then cuts the check or makes the transfer and sends a remittance advice back to Ariba to confirm the payment details, officially closing the loop. Phew, we've just walked through a pretty detailed technical process, right? So now it's time to zoom out and ask the most important question of all. Why do we do all this? What's the actual real-world business value of having a system this tightly integrated?
Well, when you finally achieve this synchronous data state, the value isn't just some abstract concept. It really boils down to 3 major measurable benefits that are going to directly impact your efficiency, your visibility, and your accuracy.
First and foremost, you get to stop doing the same work twice. It's that simple. When your data is in sync and flowing automatically, you kill the need for someone to manually type supplier info or PO numbers into 2 different systems. This saves a ton of time, and just as importantly, it slashes the number of typos and human errors.
Second, you get clarity. Because these systems are constantly talking to each other and confirming their status, from ordering to process to paid, you get a single, clear picture of where any transaction is at any given moment. No more playing detective, digging through different systems to figure out if an invoice has actually been paid yet.
And finally, this one is huge for your finance team. When data flows automatically from a shared, validated foundation, that painful month-end reconciliation process gets so much smoother. The numbers in Ariba and the numbers in the ERP are far more likely to just match. This dramatically reduces errors and saves countless hours of painful investigation.
So as we've seen, a well-integrated system isn't just some technical thing happening in the background, it's a genuine business accelerator. It frees up your people's time, it cuts down on mistakes, and it gives everyone clear visibility. Which really just leaves us with one final thought to ponder. Once your data is flowing this seamlessly, what other processes could you streamline? What new efficiencies will you unlock next?